Hello and welcome to the Always Developing Leader podcast. Most people, they think they have an income problem, right? But that is so far from the truth. Income is where it starts, maybe, but what we tend to have is a thinking problem. Did you realize that the way that we think determines how we show up? It will determine how you communicate and ultimately what you earn. Very few people have actually figured out how to create consistent, predictable results, not just once, but over and over again. The most amazing thing is, today's guest is someone who has. Dan Rochon is a keynote speaker, he's an author, and he's a master of human behavior and influence. He is the creator of Teach to Sell. Dan has done something that not many people can say for themselves. Get this, Dan hasn't had a single broke month in his business since 2008. That is impressive, to say the least. His work, he has helped entrepreneurs and sales professionals stop chasing deals and start leading conversations that actually convert by focusing on clarity, on influence, and alignment instead of pressure. Dan, I am so grateful to have you on today and just want to thank you for being here.
JJ, thank you for that awesome, amazing introduction.
Yeah, of course. So I just want to understand a little bit about the man behind these amazing results. So would you take us back to before No Broke Months? What did you have going on internally at that point in your life?
Well, let me start with externally, and then I'll tell you where that landed internally. Externally, I was a waiter at a high-end steakhouse. I was newly recovered in my alcoholism. In fact, I just celebrated 21 years of sobriety.
Wow.
So yeah, it's that's been a pretty big a pretty big point of being able to create some consistency is, having physically to be able to have the energy to do so. And so at the time, before I started so I've been in real estate sales. So you say no broke months since 2008. For those of you that have done real estate sales before, it's probably more impressive than if you're doing, eyeglass sales at a mall, right? Whatever the case may be. And when I was waiting tables, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to help people solve their problems, achieve their goals. I just didn't know how. I looked at all these different opportunities and I decided to get my real estate license. All right. So now that didn't mean that I had the understanding of what Teach to Sell is. I developed that. I've been doing it since day one, but I didn't name it until maybe 5-6 years ago. And, once I started to say, wait, well, how can I take what has allowed for me to have such a successful sales career and an amazing life? How can I take that and help other people with it? And what would I call what I do? And I recognize that it was really what I've done through these years is I've guided people. I've led them. I've taught them. And as a result of that, I've earned their trust. And as a result of that, have had consistent, predictable income.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And so go into that a little bit deeper, if you would. As far as the trust goes, what had to change in your life? Was there not trust being built before, or was it just something that you wanted to convey better, or something that you wanted to convey to other people, teach other people how to do?
Yeah, I think I was always doing it. Now it's gotten better, right? Because through time, I've my skills have improved. But I teach in the book, so I've got a book coming out called Teach to Sell, why top salespeople never sell them what they do instead. And in that book, I talk about the CPI communication model. And again, something that took me years that I was doing before I realized what I was doing. And then I documented it. And so I don't necessarily know if there was like a time in the point in time where it's like, okay, guide, lead, teach, and now you're going to gain trust. It was just like, how do I communicate that to others? And by the way, the CPI communication model is to be in rapport, to ask adept questions, and to actively listen. All right, which is simple enough, but let's unravel that. What is rapport? Rapport is a connection of energy. There was a gentleman in the early 1900s called Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He was a French priest and a philosopher, and he taught us that we're spiritual beings in a human manifestation. And as such, we are spiritual beings, and that's what I believe. I respect anybody's beliefs about that. So I don't want to challenge anybody's beliefs, right? But I believe we're spiritual beings. And so I know that when I focus on your spirit and my spirit, and when those two spirits intermingle, that is a demonstration of rapport. And then once I'm in rapport and once I'm connected with you, then I ask adept questions. An adept question is a question designed to be able to uncover the fear of what they're experiencing, to really dive deep into what is it that they're afraid of internally and externally, so that I can then identify, secondly, what is their desire internally and externally. And so once I understand what their pain is and what their desire is, now I can demonstrate to them how I or my product or service is the vehicle for them to get from whatever they're afraid of to whatever they want. For me to do that, I've got to first ask them the adept questions, the deep diving questions, for me to be able to discover what is it that they're afraid of. So number one is being rapport. That's a connection of energy. Number two is asking adept questions. That's discovering what they're afraid of and what really drives them emotionally. And then number three is to actively listen. And actively listening is to pay attention to their energy. So sort of you revert back to step one when you get to the actively listen.
Yes, yes. And so where do people get this wrong when they try to implement it? Where have you seen them get this wrong? What happens there?
I would say where people get it wrong in general is they believe that sales is talking somebody else into something. The best salespeople spend the majority of their time listening, a small part of their time handling objections, a little bit more than a small part of their time sharing their value and their proposition. But it really is more than 80% of time asking questions and discovering, so that then you know and you identify what is it that their problem and what is it that their goals, and then now you can guide them. That's teach to sell, by the way, right?
I
But you
love
have
that.
to first understand what the heck they're experiencing.
Yes, that makes so much sense. So if someone feels like they have to convince someone, when they're selling, they have to convince someone, what does that say about their certainty in what they're offering people?
I think if you have to convince, well, it says a couple things. First of all, it comes across as desperation. So what's the key in sales to not be desperate? Go lead generate, go find more business, right? So when you focus and you put in your habits of finding more business on a daily basis, a small part of your day, 1 to 3 hours a day, now you're positioning yourself so you never have to feel desperate, right? Because if I'm trying to talk JJ into hire me, hire me, hire me, look at me, I'm the best, I'm the best, rather than finding out really what JJ is, what's important to you. What's driving you? What are you afraid of? What's your pain? What's your problem? What do you want? Right? How
Yes.
much more effective is that? It's incredibly more effective. So if you're not implementing that, I'd say the mistake is maybe you just don't have the knowledge, or maybe you're desperate because you don't have the business, or maybe you just don't have the skill. But that is sales. Sales is listening.
Yes, I love that. I love that. I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in especially when you are passionate about something, right? It's so easy to get wrapped up in talking about it and being the one who is talking, instead of shutting your mouth for a little bit and just listening and taking that in, and like you said, building that rapport. I think that is something that is huge when it comes to building the rapport, which ultimately gets that sale, if you will, right?
Let me talk about that. So I'm passionate about something. I want to tell JJ, man, you got to check this out, dude. Like, this is freaking amazing, right? Now, some of that passion will transfer, right? But the majority of that, guess who leaves that conversation feeling great? Me, not you.
Yep.
Okay. Because if I make the conversation about me, I'm going to leave there and be like, it's freaking great. And I'm going to go home. And then, I'm not married, but if I was married, my wife would be like, oh, well, how did the appointment go? It went great. Okay. That means you got hired, right? No, I didn't get hired, but it went great.
Had a good conversation. This conversation was awesome. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I love
so,
that.
yeah. So that maybe feedback into the mistakes as well.
Yes. No, that makes total sense. So I want to go just a bit deeper into this, Dan. In my experience, so most people, they know what to do, right? But they just have a hard time doing it. They don't do it. From what you've seen, what patterns keep showing up that are keeping people stuck?
Man, Dunkin' Donuts are good, but weighing 250 pounds, not so good.
Yes.
And so, we have a challenge as human beings. We have a challenge with having a good relationship with long-term results, and we have a much better relationship with short-term results. And man, forget a Dunkin' Donut. Like, I could go get a Dunk Donut right now and I'd be a happy man. Okay. But is that good for me? Clearly no. All right. And so what happens is what gets in people's way of like implementing the habits. Like, I know what to do, but why do I not do it? Is because it's easier not to do it in some cases. In some cases, there's a philosophy that I talk to you about in Teach to Sell called commit or quit. And I learned, and I don't talk about this where I learned that. I don't talk about it in the book, but I'll tell you where I learned. I learned it in rehab. All right. And there's actually three choices that we have. We have the choice of commit, quit, or get meager results. So in the book, I say, here's the three choices you have: commit, quit, or get meager results. But I'm not going to accept meager results from you. Okay. And here's the way that I learned it in rehab. The happiest drunks were the sober drunks that got help and support. The next happiest drunks were the drunks that said, screw it, I'm just going to drink and I'm all in. The least happiest drunks were the ones that would say, I'm going to only have 3 drinks on Wednesday, and I'm only going to drink on Friday. But then if it was me, there's 74 drinks on Wednesday, and a drink on Friday, a drink on Saturday, a drink on Sunday, and actually 74 on each of those days as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Was me back then. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the least happiest drunk because they struggle with the internal debate. They're always,
Mhm.
and then they feel shameful because they didn't do it, or they feel like they're not good enough. Right. So what I discovered, and I apply that same concept to business, is the most successful, happy salespeople are the ones that show up 5 days a week and do the work. What's the work? Lead generate, convert leads to meet with you, go on appointments, negotiate, practice your scripts and role play. That's called CPI time. That's your work. That's your work. That's your job description. So the next happiest salespeople are driving Ubers. They said, screw it. I'm not a salesperson. I'm going to go do something different. All right. And the least happiest salesperson are the ones that know what they're supposed to do. We all know what we're supposed to do, by the way, and they don't do it. They're compromising with themselves. They're debating with themselves. They're making that promise. Only 1 drink on Wednesday and only drinking more than 1 on Friday, and they know they're not going to keep it. And then they have that struggle within themselves. They have that debate, and then they slip and they have 74 drinks, or they don't show up and lead generate for 5 days. And then they're assessing themselves and they're feeling bad about themselves. And that's where the concept of not good enough is. In fact, the
Yes.
demon in my story in the book Teach to Sell, the villain in Teach to Sell is not good enough. The hero in the book is the reader, and the guide to the book is the book, or myself as the author.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And it makes so much sense when you put those two comparisons together. For me anyways, it really does. That makes so much sense. And when you talk about the word motivation, so I'm curious about what you think about that word, that word motivation. Do you think people rely too much on that word and not enough on their systems that they've built and their habits and patterns that they've built?
Motivation is a short-term solution. Systems and resources implemented with daily habits implemented allows for you to have consistent, predictable income. It's sort of, if you're familiar with the book and the movie The Secret. Well, believing in yourself, which would, be in the motivation bucket, is important. All right. Knowing that you're worthy is important. Knowing that you can rely on yourself is vital, but it's incomplete. I cannot sit at that chair behind where I'm standing right now, and I cannot visualize making $100,000 a month every single month with ease and grace, and then waking up and doing the same, and waking up and doing the same, and waking up, and 20 years later, I'm still visualizing, but I haven't taken any action.
Yeah.
You think I'm going to get it? No. Does the visualization, is it helpful? Absolutely. But it's incomplete. Does the
Yes.
motivation, is it helpful? Absolutely. But it's incomplete and it's temporary. Willpower is temporary, right? That's the reason why we say to do the important activities in the morning where you still have the willpower. Me, I don't make this mistake often anymore, but I used to make the mistake. I'd be lead generating and somebody says, I can't talk now. Can you call me at 8 o'clock tonight? Sure, I'll call you at 8 o'clock tonight. I go to the gym at 4:30. I'm done at 5:30. I'm sitting in the hot tub at 6. And then I come home and make dinner for my daughter. And then I'm like, I gotta
Mhm.
make this call. And I don't want to make this call. I want to sit and I want to watch TV, or I want to
Yeah.
work on a project, or I want to go take a walk, or I want to go play a game with my daughter, or I want to do something other than having the willpower to make this call. So I think all of those temporary things all rest within, the same bucket as motivation, but it's understanding that those are all great things, but they're incomplete. You have to put the action on top of that. And then to be able to put the action on top of that, that's where you go through an exercise, which is, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's important to me about that? What's important to me about that? What's important to me about that? And now I've got something that's going to drive me to be able to take action. When I started, I was a waiter, before I got into sales. I mean, I was sales as a waiter. I made tons of money. I worked in one of the highest end steaks houses in the world. All the celebrities came there, and it was great, but it wasn't sustainable, right? It wasn't until I got into sales when I recognized and I realized to say, wait, I can have something that's sustainable for me, something that I can take action every single day. And as long as I create good daily habits, then I could be able to create something that's worthy. And I've been able to do that.
I love
And
that. And so,
so can anybody, right? It's not about
yes,
me. It's about you, the listener, and the viewers. You could freaking do that, because if a
yes.
waiter could do that, anybody could do that.
Yeah, I love that, because I don't know, I didn't realize that that was your background, but I come from a similar addiction background. And it's interesting how that was really what brought me into leadership development. But it feels like everything that we've been talking today is really it's pointing back to identity, right? Like our identity, who we are. And so if somebody is listening to this right now and they feel stuck, or if they feel uncapable or inconsistent, and they're getting frustrated, what identity are they operating from? What would you call that?
Scarcity.
Yeah.
What's a tool to be able to get past that identity?
Yeah.
Teach to sell. Get the book.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And it's so true, though. I love it, because I don't think I think they can hear that those three words, teach to sell, and not fully understand what it means, and I think that's so important for everybody that's listening to this, that it's about who you are, who you're becoming, the patterns that you've built. So one of the slogans that I live by is, it's not easy, but it's worth it. And it's something that I learned coming out of my struggles, and into a life that was so foreign to me, and something that I didn't ever know if I would ever be able to fully regain. That was quite a few years ago now, not as many as you, Dan, but I tell you, not many people can be consistent for 21 years. And so congrats. And just, that is so amazing. I can't tell you how amazing that is. And I'm grateful that you shared that, because I didn't realize that was something that you'd gone through. And so is it possible for somebody that is inconsistent to have long-term success?
No.
Yeah, 1,000%. I would agree.
That's a complete
If you're not
answer,
consistent,
JJ. I mean, for me to expand on it, but there's nothing else to say.
no, I respect that, because that's so true. The answer is no. And we'll leave it at that. At the end of the day, you can't keep the same thinking patterns and expect different results, right? That's literally how our brain is wired. And it's crazy to think, when we start to understand some of these things, and you can get these resources like Teach to Sell, and you can connect with people like yourself. You can learn these things that we're starting to uncover in neuroscience. It's a really exciting time, no matter where you're at in life. You can be the crappiest place you've ever been, or you can be in the best place you've ever been. And that tomorrow you can still train your brain to build new patterns, to do new things, to do better things. I appreciate you bringing all this to light.
Yeah, I will expand on the no. As you were talking, I recognize. So can you have consistency if you're inconsistent? Only if you're lucky, or only if you're really, really smart about being lazy. Okay. But
Yes.
in either case, you have to align yourself with a system or somebody else that is consistently generating things that would then allow for you to basically ride on their coattails so that you could be inconsistent. All right. And you could do that if you're just fortunate, or you could do that if you're just really smart about who you relate to. That in of itself could be a skill. And, but somebody or something, there has to be a machine that's generating the consistent activity that's going to generate the results. Okay. And in sales, it's those 5 things I mentioned earlier. It's to lead generate, to go on appointments to get hired, I'm sorry. So to lead generate is to convert leads, to meet with you, go on appointments to get hired, negotiate and practice your scripts and role play. Those are the 5 things as a business, as a salesperson. You do those 5 things over and over and over and over again, then you get support to do everything else for you, then you're going to have success. As a business owner, there's a different 5 things. If you're in the business owner world, then the 5 things that make a difference for you is what I call leverage time. The leverage time is to be able to recruit talented people to you, select the best people to be in business with and the right people to be in business with, train those people so they can reach their goals, lead those people so they know how to think to reach their goals. And then there's the word again, motivate those people so they can reach their goals, right? Again, motivation is good, but it's incomplete. So those are the 5 activities as a business owner you do. Again, is recruit people to you, select the best people to be in business with, train them so they can reach their goals, lead them so they know how to think to reach their goals, motivate them so they can reach their goals. So those are the 5 activities that I told you with CPI time, the 5 activities that I told you with leverage time. There's one last critical activity, which is to manage your money. Now that you have those 11 activities, I give you every single critical activity that's going to move the needle in business. And the more focus that you could be on those 11 activities or either bucket of the 5, depending on how you divide yourself up, then the more likely you can have consistency. Now, going back to your question, can you have consistency by being consistent in these roles? Well, as an individual, perhaps, but not as an organization. Okay, so the individual's got to align themselves with an organization that is generating the opportunity for them. But short of that, I don't see how it's possible.
Yeah, it does resonate with me, and it makes so much sense. We can have spells of whatever you want to call it, good luck or fate or fortune or whatever, but is that going to last forever? I don't think that's the case. We were all put on this earth for a specific reason, and whatever that reason is, if we're leaving 50% on the table or 60% on the table or 10% even on the table, we are not living out our true full identity. I'm going to close here. We're getting close to wrapping up this show, Dan, but I've got some just rapid fire questions. So if you're good with it, I'm going to shoot off a few questions. And as soon as you come up with an answer, shout it out. And I just really appreciate you being here today. This has been amazing.
Corn dog, apple pie.
Love it. Okay, so
we haven't started.
No. But I do that every single time that I get in a rapid fire situation. So I understand completely. All right, so let's close out with just a few quick questions. One belief that holds people back the most.
Not good enough.
One daily habit that changes everything.
Prayer.
Biggest lie people believe about themselves.
Not good enough.
And then what's one thing that you believe that most people still would disagree with?
That we have a choice, that we design our lives, that we come from different backgrounds. We come from different opportunity. Some people are born into poor families or developing countries or different races, different, whatever the case may be. And sometimes we let our circumstance get in the way of us arriving to our potential. And so my strong belief is that we can all create our destinies. Now, when you hear me say that, you're probably going to agree with me. Yet, when you put that into practice, into play, that's where that voice is going to come up and give you every single freaking reason why you can't be successful, why you can't do it. And then you have a choice, listen to that voice or know the truth, which is you can. I know that wasn't rapid, but that's
no, that was so good. And that was the last question that I had in the rapid fire. So I'm glad that you ended with that. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Teach to sell. And there's a lot of people out there right now that I'm sure are trying to figure out why they're stuck, or why they're having these thoughts come into their head. And a lot about what we talked about today. It's not just about what you're doing. It's about how you are thinking and really about how you're doing that consistently. And so, Dan, if people want to go deeper with you, what is the best way to get a hold of you? How do you want them to reach out?
Yeah, you mentioned about, what keeps people stuck. There's a very specific exercise, a very specific model that I go through in Teach to Sell to show you why you're getting the same results over and over again. And what is the one thing you could do, and anybody can do it today, that when you do it, now you can get unstuck. And if you want to discover and learn more about that, you can visit www.teachtosellbook.com. That's teachtosellbook.com. That's the best way to learn about how I can help you. You can also Google my name, Dan Rochon, Rochon. And find me on Facebook, find me on socials, and reach out to me, and I'll respond to you. And I would love an opportunity to be able to be a resource for you.
I love that. Go ahead, guys, look up Dan Rochon and the amazing work he's doing. To everyone who joined us today, I just want to say thank you for being here. Remember, don't wait for the perfect time. You have to take the steps now that you've been avoiding to live the life you were created for. So until next week, from myself, our amazing guest, Dan, and the entire team at Always Developing Leader, ciao and God bless.